Hello there, darlings. Nice being back again. Now, today I would like to talk about something rather unpleasant. Although, to be fair, we are talking about Scientology, so there's nothing much pleasant about it. But today we're going to talk about elder abuse, what I have seen and witnessed myself, particularly while I was working as a SEAG member. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, I actually grew up in Scientology. I was the youngest child of three in a Scientology family. Both of my parents were staff members in our local org in Basel, in Switzerland. And then when I was 9 years old, I signed my life away to serve for the rest of my life for Scientology by signing the so-called billion-year contract to work as a SEAG member. Then when I was 13 years old, I was shipped off to England, where I started to work in the so-called Cadet Org, which is an organization for children who legally, mind you, legally speaking, are not allowed to work as SEAG members. We still worked, but again, just for legal terms, we were not. We were just cadets rather than SEAG members. And then when I was 16 years old, I did this so-called EPF, which is the Estate Project Force. It's like a boot camp that you do before you can actually join the SEAG. And then with 16 I finished, and then from 16 to 20 I was working as a SEAG member. Now, during the whole time as a SEAG member and also as a cadet, there were about 350 staff members, well, SEAG members, and amongst them there were quite a few elderly people. And there are two particular people I remember. One was John Cox, who was a very tall, very thin gentleman, and the other one was Robert Edwards, or as he was known as Bob Edwards. And they were both originally on the ship with Hubbard when he started this SEAG. And I remember these two in particular because they passed away while I was there working in, well, John Cox, I think he passed away when I was still in the Cadet Org. And Bob, he passed away, I think, when I was in the SEAG already. And I'm mentioning these two because they worked until the very last day. They never had, they had a slightly easier schedule, so to speak. I think they still started to work, had to go on the bus at 8 o'clock in the morning for breakfast, go to St. Hill, start working there. And then I think they were allowed to come home with a bus that left at 6:30 in the evening, rather than 4 hours later at 10 or 10:30 in the evenings. They were able to come home a little earlier. But nonetheless, they still worked every day. And I think John Cox really worked until he maybe worked until 2 days before he passed away. And he passed away then on the property of Walsh Manor, as I remember. And with Rob, it was a little different. He actually stayed at the Birthing, which is where we lived, which was at Walsh Manor, which is about 20 minutes drive from St. Hill, which is where all the staff actually lived. And he remained there in Walsh Manor for a good while, for a few months before he then passed away. But he was still working. He would write letters. He would do letter stuffing, as it was called. So literally you get an envelope, and then you've got some letters, some promotional material or whatever, and you just stuff it into the letter, lick it, close it, put a stamp on it, and he would do that the whole day long. And this is with every SEAG member. Every SEAG member is expected to work until the very last day. There is no such thing as showing gratitude to somebody who has worked all their life, who has reached a certain age, and now they're permitted to retire and enjoy the next 10, 20, if they're lucky, even 30 years of their lives, just relaxing, taking it easy, doing their hobbies, going for walks, and just enjoying the twilight years of their lives, so to speak. That is not something that happens. You're expected to work for the rest of your life. As I mentioned earlier, when I was 9 years old, I signed a billion-year contract. I mean, this is taken very literal. You're expected to work in this life until you drop dead. And then when you pass away, you have 21 years of leave of absence. You are permitted to not return for 21 years. So when you're 21 years old, at the very latest, of course, you could return when you're 18 years old. When you're, in your new life that you have, you're expected to come back and join and keep working for Scientology in the SEOC. And again, this is taken very literal. Although I've never heard while I was there, or before or after, of anyone ever sort of popping up and saying, "Oh, hello, my name is John Cox," for example. "I was here then and then, so I'm back to serve again." So I've never heard any of that, but it's still taken very seriously. And there were many SEAL members who were over 65. I mean, I hesitate to mention to say any number, but surely there must have been, about 60, 70 people or so that, just looking at them, they would have been over 65, 70 years old, and they would still work all day long. And, it was just, now looking back, it's just such a sad thing. However, I do have to say something, and this is the reason why I've been a little hesitant on making this video, because I was, there's a certain attitude you have towards older people, or towards people with disabilities, for example, people who, for whatever reason, are not able to work. Maybe they had an accident, or they have some other disability, they've become blind, or anything like that. And the attitude is that such a person is useless. In the SEOC, there is this attitude of, you are only as valuable as you can serve others. You're only as valuable as you can serve others. Meaning, if you are not able to serve anymore, then you have no value. You're useless. You have a waste of space, a waste of resources. And I am very much guilty of that attitude. I really thought that. I saw John, I saw Bob, I saw other people who came home a little earlier than the rest of the staff, and I thought, oh, what lazy people. I really did. Or, for example, with John, who then would stay at Walsh, and of course he worked some hours throughout the day, but I don't think he worked the whole day. And I would think, what a waste of resources when he ate dinner, And it is a horrible thing to have said. Well, I never said it, thank God. I didn't have that evil bone in me to have actually gone up to him or anyone else to say anything like that. But I felt that. I felt like, what a waste of space. Just drop your body and just come to the new one. Why would you hang on to such a broken body? Just drop it. Just drop your body, die, and get a new one, and then come back, and you can work so much better. It's so much more efficient, And it's bringing up certain emotions in me thinking about this, because I genuinely thought this, and I feel absolutely awful that I thought this. And I have experienced a lot of unpleasant things and evil things when I was in Scientology and the SEOC. And talking about it, about my experience and what has happened to me, certainly has helped me to deal with the situation. But I think it's also important to take accountability, to admit when you have done something wrong, when you've done something that, was generally evil. Now, I didn't do anything as such, but I did think these things, and I, I genuinely thought that. I really thought, you're such a waste of space. Why don't you die already? And it's a very horrible attitude, but that is the truth. That is the truth. That is what I thought. And it took some years to get rid of that notion. Once I left the SEOC. So I left the SEOC when I was 20 years old. And I think when I was in culinary school, which I started in 2015, I think that is then when I started. It became more a subject for me to look at people who are retired and so on and so forth, particularly people who are retired from, working as a chef all their lives and so on and so forth. And it sort of made me realize that actually that is the wrong attitude, that these are not a waste of space. These are incredibly important people, very valuable people, and, they deserve their rest. They deserve their rest, and there should not be dismissed that people who have a certain age, they have experience, they have wisdom, and they're not just waiting to die, so to speak. Uh, you know, they are taking the well-deserved rest, enjoying the last years that they have, 10, 20, hopefully 30, even 40 years. I mean, these days we do live longer, so that's great. And I have changed my attitude on that completely, including my attitude towards people with disabilities, because that was also my attitude when I was a child, when I was in the Kadetok and the Siok, that people who are, for example, blind, who are completely deaf, who only have one arm or something like that, I did see them as less than other people because they cannot produce as much. You see, that is the sort of scale I use. How much can they work? Not who are they as a person? What is their character? What joy can they bring to others? How can they help others? It's more of what physical work can they do. If they can't do any physical work, then there are less than me or less than everybody else, so to speak. And yeah, I had this attitude my whole life until I left when I was 20 years old, and then this attitude, this mentality is still stuck with me for a good 5 years, I would say. Yeah, no, a good 3 years, because I left in 2012, and then in 2015 I started the apprenticeship, and then 15, 16, 17, 18 I finished my apprenticeship. So yeah, 2015, 2016, that's when I sort of started to look at that sort of thing and think about these sort of things and realize that I was very much wrong. Of course, I mean, I didn't just think this just because I wanted to think that. I grew up in a religious cult that believed these things, and I was indoctrinated in that as a child and so on and so forth. Yes, of course. But, when we, and I say we, I talk about myself and also what I've heard from other people. When we think about our past, particularly when we had traumatizing past, we do but we do remember much more the things that happened to us rather than the things that we did to others or the things that we thought of others. And I think it is part, at least for me, I can't talk for everybody else, but for me, I think it is important to also talk about this and openly, and also be judged for it if I shall be judged, because this has happened. This is the truth. And whatever happens, after having published this video, well, this is just what happened. And I think it's important to admit to the things that we have done and admit to the attitudes we had. And I'm very glad that I had rather than have this attitude. And yeah, I mean, for all it's worth it, I want to apologize to John and Bob, that I looked at them and I thought of them in that sort of way. And every other Silk member that I saw that came home a little earlier, that was, frankly, pretty shitty of me. But here we are now. I do hope you found this nonetheless interesting and informative. And I wish you a very good day. Goodbye.